Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Lunatics Radio Hour podcast. I'm Abby Brinker, sitting here with Alan Kudan.
Hello.
And today we are talking about the history of doppelgangers.
I'm going to be honest with you. Ever since I saw this topic, I was like, I don't know what we're going to do with this. As in, is this a scary thing? Because it seems like I've had people say like, hey, I saw your doppelganger. And then they'll show me a picture on, they like creep shot some guy on the street. And I always think,
Creep shot.
yeah, I guess it sort of looks like me.
That's really a bastardization of what a doppelganger is. That's become like the common man term, but that's not the origins of doppelgangers. And maybe that's me being dramatic, but listen, that's my
you've piqued my interest. So I mean, the word doppelganger sounds very specialized.
It does. Specific.
It
is.
Yes, thank you for the synonym. It's not just like similar person, right? I'm sure there's
an actual definition. Would you like me to give it to you?
Can I get the etymology first?
So doppelganger is a German word.
I freaking knew it. I knew it was going to be German.
It's a German word. The literal meaning is double walker or double goer.
Double what? Double goer?
Like double walker. That's the literal translation.
It's like when you have a limp.
Well, that's actually interesting, Alan, because I know that the term doppelganger seems a little ethereal. So let me give us a little bit of direction here so we know what's going to happen.
Okay.
So the first thing I want to say to answer your question is that today is going to be part 1, where we're going to focus on the mythology of doppelgangers, and it has quite a vast presence in some mythology. So that will be kind of part of this, as well as real claims by some famous people, sometimes just everyday people, throughout history of sightings and experiences with doppelgangers. And then part 2 will really be about how all of this history connects with horror and kind of the exploration of doppelgangers in horror films. So that's the journey that we're about to embark on together.
Okay, so I was unaware that I thought this was going to be like a softball episode. I didn't realize this was going to be like a real...
Oh, this is a heavy hitter.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's again, my entire assumption about doppelgangers is some person that looks similar to somebody else.
The thing that I found most interesting about researching this topic is that I had exactly the same experience that you just had, where I thought
you had a doppelganger-like experience?
Yes, exactly. Where I discovered a lot of stuff that was net new information to me. So again, there's a lot to explore. To tease out the ending of this episode a little bit, there are some very, very, very famous historical figures who have stories and claims of seeing doppelgangers that are kind of like echoed throughout history, like the same kind of experience. So we're going to get into all of it. It's a lot to unpack. I bet you could actually have a whole series of 10 episodes on this topic. But we're, again, as we do here, we're giving you kind of like the palatable, accessible version of this.
Okay, yeah. I'm really curious to see where this is going.
Let's start with today's sources.
Wikipedia.
A book called The Night Side of Nature by Catherine Crowe from 1850. The Doppelganger Wikipedia entry. A research paper called The Vardøgr, Perhaps Another Indicator of the Non-Locality of Consciousness by L. David Letlier. A book called The Letters of Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley by Betty T. Bennett. A listverse.com article by Paul Poisuo. 10 Disturbing Tales of Doppelgangers. Ward Hill Lamon's book, The Recollections of Abraham Lincoln. A Vice article by Natasha Wynarczyk, The Time When You're Most Likely to See Your Doppelganger, and a book called Footfalls on the Boundary of Another World by Robert Dale Owen.
I mean, that's not fair. You just totally made this topic up just by perusing the books on your nightstand.
If only. So first I want to talk about Catherine Crowe's book, The Night Side of Nature from the mid-1850s.
Okay, I'll bite. Why?
So Catherine Crowe, first of all, is this wonderful, very early paranormal investigator that doesn't get a lot of credit, but she has this book from the 1850s that has an entire chapter on doppelgangers, and it really is the sort of the thing that thrust the word doppelgangers, or kind of this like paranormal version of them, into the modern Western, like, you know, American zeitgeist, if you will.
Okay, so before 1850, I mean, yeah.
We're going to talk about the mythology that dates back way before 1850, but in terms of thinking of doppelgangers as almost like this glitch in the matrix type thing, she kind of helped repopularize it. I also read some sources that really credit her with naming this entity, this whatever you want to call it that we're going to get into, this paranormal thing, a doppelganger versus something else. Because, for instance, Francis Gross's Provincial Glossary from 1787 uses the word fetch to describe the apparition of a living person.
Fetch?
Fetch. So
Like
there was
go
other
fetch the
terminology.
ball?
Correct.
Why?
Right. Yeah, that's a, topic for another day.
Oh, it was a noun. A fetch.
Right.
I see.
Yeah, and there's other, like, a lot of Scandinavian mythology around this that we're going to talk about that obviously has different terminology. But doppelganger as kind of the thing we all refer to, like you said at the beginning of the episode, when somebody on the street, said, "Oh, I just saw your doppelganger." That's kind of like, we can kind of thank Catherine Crowe for that. What we're really talking about today, if it hasn't been clear so far.
Doppelgangers.
Paranormal doubles.
Okay.
That's really what this is.
Got it.
And there's very slight different versions of that. And it's usually a double of yourself. In a lot of these cases, there's this foreboding, foreshadowing associated with it. But there's different things on the spectrum. But that's really kind of how I'm defining doppelgangers for us today.
Didn't we have an episode a while back about changelings?
No.
Why do I think we did?
I don't know, especially because you asked me this like 3 days ago. We had the same conversation.
No, but we absolutely no. This is how dare you? Okay, we absolutely talked about changelings because they had something to do with the Fae.
Right, we did a Fae episode.
Did we talk about changelings?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
I know we watched the film Changeling at some point, but I don't remember why. Maybe it was for that reason.
Was it for Horror Movie Club?
I don't remember. Anyway, what would you like to say about changelings?
I mean, aren't they doppelgangers? Like, I thought it was a fae that gets put in the crib in place of the baby.
Yeah, no, that's right. But is it...
Why the hell would I know that?
That's a shapeshifter. That's not this.
Well, how else would doppelgangers look like you? They have to be...
I think the difference here that you're getting caught up on is, like, for a doppelganger, we don't necessarily know like, that has no other origin entity. Like, it's not one thing that shifts into you. It's like a astral projection of you or something like that.
Oh.
Like, those are some of the theories. It's not like, oh, I'm a ghoul and I'm going to dress up as Alan for the day and do some trickster energy. It's like some kind of expansion of you or like echo of you.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So these doppelgangers are literally you.
That's the majority of what we're going to talk about.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, keep going.
Here
All
we
right,
go.
yeah,
Let's dive in.
That's different.
We haven't even gotten into anything yet. So despite the terminology to describe paranormal doubles and, whatever we settle on, the concept has been around since the dawn of mankind.
In the dawn of man, there was doppelgangers. What? I'm sorry, I didn't know where that was going with that.
In ancient Egypt, the concept of the soul was made up of several different components. We talked about this at length during our series on mummies.
Oh, yeah. What were they again?
Well, the relevant...
The ka.
So the ka is what we're going to talk about today.
Oh, shit. Got it right.
And so the ka acts as almost a copy of or a spiritual double of the person in question with the same soul, essence, memories, emotions, right? But kind of a Xerox, if you will. It's often referred to as the quote-unquote vital essence.
A Xerox?
Like a copy.
A photocopy.
Okay, so I used a brand name.
You did?
Sue me.
So do you actually know the origin of the Xerox machine?
No, but I feel like maybe you've said it on the podcast before. It sounds familiar.
No, it's just it's a great example of when you invent a technology that doesn't really have a home, you don't know what's going to happen. So a guy was trying to make a new type of photograph. He was trying to make a new type of photography, but photography had existed for a long time very successfully. And it was already just a much better reproduction of the image. And this was just kind of a clunky way to go about it. So Xerox just had no home for their technology until somebody figured out that it could be used very, very quickly on a flat press document. Mm-hmm. Hence the Xerox machine.
The more you know, folks. And relevant for today, right? Because copying.
First time for everything.
So it's believed that the body would die when the ka left the body, right? That the ka sort of transcends the physical body. But the ka would still need food and drink to survive.
That's why you bury them with dogs.
And food and drink, yeah. But the idea of this removal of the spiritual or vital essence from the physical body helps set the stage for doppelgangers later on. Alan, we're going to talk about your favorite type of mythology now.
Godzilla.
Norse mythology.
That's a good second best.
I spent a lot of time practicing my pronunciation of this word, and let's see how well I do.
Okay.
A Vardøgr is almost a foreshadowing figure, meaning it's seen performing the actions of a person it represents in advance. So it's like a pre-echo. So though this is really, really, really similar to a doppelganger, it's kind of like a sister paranormal event. It's a little bit different. Generally, they fall under the same phenomenon umbrella, though.
As what?
Doppelgangers.
Okay.
Like they're in the same category. So a Vardøgr is seen more similar to déjà vu, less malicious than doppelgangers tend to be.
So it's a brief image of the future.
I'm going to give you a great example.
Okay.
Which I think will really describe this for you. So all of the kind of information that I'm pulling here is from that research paper that I mentioned by L. David LEITER.
Okay.
He had some personal experiences with it, so this is really interesting.
Hmm.
He describes it as a quote-unquote premonitory sight or sound of a person before he arrives. LEITER also makes a really interesting comparison between a Vardøgr and out-of-body experiences.
Okay.
And I think that makes a lot of sense here, especially if we're thinking about something like astral projections or these moments when people have near-death experiences and they're like floating above their body. Again, it's kind of similar to the ka, right? This idea of a different version of your body or a soul that can leave your body, drawing similarities to the mythology there.
A non-corporeal version of the self.
Correct. But that can like dislodge from the body itself.
Hence the non-corporeal part.
Right, but just meaning it's not like it can exist before you die, you know? It can come and go in life.
Sure, yeah.
So in his paper, LEITER describes two personal experiences that he had with what he's describing as a Vardøgr. The first is this really simple story that, again, I think demonstrates this so perfectly. I kind of was like, I get it. On a very normal day, he drove home from work, and then he entered his house, as he usually does, a million times. His wife was cooking dinner in the kitchen, as she usually was at that time, and she was immediately confused. And she asked him why was he coming back inside again. And he was like, what do you mean? Like, I just got home. What are you talking about? And she's like, you literally just came through 10 minutes ago. Like, did you go back out to your car? What happened? And he was like, I didn't. And so their first thought was like, is somebody in the house? You know, they searched the house. But he had a son who was upstairs. And the son was like, yeah, I heard your footsteps come up the stairs 10 minutes ago. So it's kind of like this phantom auditory premonition of the dad coming home. But in this case, it's something like very, very simple. Just the routine of coming home. But it's like almost like, again, pre-deja vu or this imprint, this physical premonition, you know, of something happening right before it actually does happen.
That really does sound like just glitch in the matrix stuff.
Right. Yeah.
The guy just like disappeared.
Nobody saw him. They just heard him.
It also sounds like somebody that just has memory problems.
Well, you have two corroborations here. You have the wife and the son who both heard the same thing.
Yeah, but he could have just walked out.
I mean.
And then had his memory problem and walked back in.
Had his memory problem, yeah. Sounds like a very sharp, put together man, but yeah.
I mean, I don't know him personally, so we're just speculating.
It's true, on both ends. There's also a similar concept in Finnish mythology called Etianan.
Okay.
You're suspicious.
I am.
So similar to Egyptian mythology, in Finnish folklore, there is a concept that people have a haltia, or some sort of spiritual being that protects each individual.
Like a guardian angel.
Yes. Haltia can take many forms, but one version of this can be an Etian, or a spiritual protector that takes the form of a person, or similar to a Vardøgr, it can simply live out actions ahead of them actually happening. Sometimes Etian can refer to the feeling of déjà vu or a notion that something is about to happen, like a bad feeling, that kind of thing.
Okay.
In a way, again, the concept acts as déjà vu, a doppelganger, and a Vardøgr all rolled up into one. It's kind of like a bigger, broader term. But in modern use in Finland, apparently it's mostly used to refer to premonitions now. The meaning of the word has kind of shifted.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
As in like, hey, I just had a Etienne. Hey, man, that Etienne you told me about was wild.
There you go.
Is that a correct
Does your
usage?
Jeopardy use it in a sentence?
Yeah.
Nice. I don't know. We'll have
They
to
don't actually do that on Jeopardy.
Don't they sometimes?
No, you're just thinking of generally like trivia challenges like Quiz Bowl.
Right.
You can ask for, oh, no, also like spelling bees. I think you're just thinking of spelling bees.
Yeah, all those spelling bees I frequent, they're hot on my brain.
Yeah, can you use it in a sentence?
I once had an Etienne.
From the land of
Finland.
And we're on fire tonight.
Not to minimize everything that we've talked about so far, but I'm very, very excited to get into real claims of doppelgangers.
More real than the guy with memory problems?
Oh, it's about to get turned up to an 11.
Because we're at like a 2.
It's going to, I'm telling you, it's all about to pop off.
Okay.
And there's also one of my favorite types of personal paranormal experiences, which is kind of like a categorization, again, like of glitch in the matrix. So this is really one of my favorite topics, and I'm eager to get into it. I do want to give a content warning for kind of the rest of this episode.
For all your doppelgangers out there.
A lot of these things are going to be like foreshadowing of death, but in some cases, miscarriages, stillbirths, things like that. So if that's something that might be upsetting or not interesting to listen to, just be warned. Let's ease into this. So we're going to start in Paris. The year is 1612.
Great year.
Do you remember it fondly?
No.
John Donne was an English poet, and on the very same evening that his wife endured a stillbirth of their child, John Donne claimed to have seen his wife's doppelganger. The account that we're going to quote from is written by English writer Isaac Walton in his biography called The Life of Dr. John Donne. Notably, this passage is also quoted in Catherine Crowe's book that we talked about, The Night Side of Nature. 2-for-1 source on this one.
Okay.
Quote, 2 days after their arrival there, Mr. Donne was left alone in that room in which Sir Robert and he and some other friends had dinner together. To this place, Sir Robert returned within half an hour, and as he left, he found Mr. Donne alone. But in such ecstasy and so altered as to his looks, as amazed Sir Robert to behold him, in so much that he earnestly desired Mr. Donne to declare befallen him in the short time of his absence.
Okay, so guy 1 leaves.
Yeah.
Guy 2 finds guy 1 still there, but looking all different.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're with me. To which Mr. Donne was not able to make a present answer, but after a long and perplexing pause, did at last say, I have seen a dreadful vision since I saw you. I have seen my dear wife pass twice by me through this room, with her hair hanging about her shoulders, and a dead child in her arms. This I have seen since I saw you. To which Mr. Robert replied, Sure, sir, you have slept since I saw you, and this is the result of some melancholy dream, which I desire you to forget, for you are now awake.
Who did the seeing?
Mr. Donne, John Donne.
Guy 1.
His wife. He was the one who saw this vision of his own wife. And then there's this other man who's like account that we're hearing.
Okay, so guy 2 finds
Sir Robert.
Finds guy 1.
Mr. Donne.
Looking all different, despite the fact that he just left.
Yeah. And he's saying, why are you, what's going on? And he's saying, I saw my wife walk by with a dead baby. The other guy is like, well, you're just dreaming. That was just a bad dream.
But he says he slept since he saw him.
Well, that's what he's saying. He's like, you just must have slept. It was just a dream.
But he just left.
It's later. It's later. Yeah. It's saying after dinner.
Got it. So he just left, and then he just still found him in
found him in the dinner room.
There later. I see. Thank
dinner
you.
Room,
Please continue.
Room. To which Mr. Donne's reply was, I cannot be sure that I live now, than that I have not slept since I saw you, and am assure that at her second appearing, she stopped, looked me in the face, and vanished. This is from 1612. Very haunting stuff.
I'm mortified.
Mortified?
Okay, so guy 1 was not the doppelganger?
No, the wife was.
The wife was. So him leaving and then being found back in the place, despite the similarities to the first story we heard, is a coincidence of about a guy leaving.
This is all the same story.
No, the dad.
Oh,
in
the
house.
dad? Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, that's what threw me.
No, this is from 1612. That was from like 1987.
Okay, yes. But I thought the doppelganger was going to be guy leaves, and then he's still found in the house.
No, the wife is a doppelganger. This is just like, it's very typical of this, of like writings from this time, that there's like layers and layers of witnesses that are happening.
Right, and they're just terrible at writing because they're too busy dying of the plague.
Well, okay, yeah, that's okay. So then let's pivot. Let's move on. Maybe that was not the greatest lead
Okay,
into
no,
this.
that was horrifying. So the guy sees an image, which is an image.
He sees what he thinks is his wife, who's walking around carrying a dead child with, yes, as absolutely horrifying. And then she vanishes right in front of him. And then come to find out that very night, his wife does endure a stillbirth. But of course, she's not walking around with the dead baby.
Oh, did you tell us that part at the end?
Yes, I told you that at the beginning. Yeah.
I missed. Well, okay.
Yeah, you got to put it all together.
This is like a vocal version of House of Leaves.
Wow. I didn't mean to be so compelling and mysterious with this.
But I think we finally got to the heart of it.
Okay. All right, let's see if we could be more concise on the next one here. This is terrible. The next claim, okay, focus up here because this next claim is really actually important and you're going to be interested in it.
It's more complicated than the last one.
Well, it's a little more complicated, but you know the players.
Okay.
It revolves around a horror icon. Maybe the horror icon. A horror icon we have covered on so many episodes, but specifically an icon that also came up in the found footage episodes.
It's Pinhead, isn't it?
Yep, it's Pinhead. Yep, a horror icon. A real historical figure,
He's
Pinhead.
a horror icon.
We're talking about Mary Shelley.
Okay, she's different.
The author of Frankenstein.
Alleged.
About a month after her husband, Percy Bysshe Shelley, drowned in Italy, Mary Shelley wrote a letter to a friend and described an instance where Percy had actually met his own doppelganger. So I'm going to pause because this is layered as well.
You already lost me.
Percy, Mary Shelley's husband, Percy.
Okay, thank you.
Whilst he is still alive.
Yes.
Has an experience where he sees his own doppelganger.
Sure.
There's also going to be experiences we're going to talk about where other people see his doppelganger.
Okay.
Then he dies.
Yes.
And after she's in the grieving process, Mary Shelley decides that she's going to write a letter to a friend describing what he had told her about. The reason why I'm giving this backstory is because we're going to quote from her letter. So I want you to know the source of the information.
Okay.
Okay. You with me?
Sure. I think so.
Similar to the last story, this event came right after Mary Shelley had experienced a miscarriage that almost took her life. So just like the last story, the husband is seeing the wife during an event that is related to issues with birthing.
Okay.
Okay. You with me still?
Yeah.
We're quoting from Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley's letters to Maria Gisbone, dated August 15th, 1822.
Okay.
Quote, talking it over the next morning, he told me that he had many visions lately. He had seen the figure of himself, which met him as he walked on the terrace and said to him, "How long do you mean to be content?" Not very terrific words, and certainly not prophetic of what has occurred. But Shelley had often seen these figures when ill. But the strangest thing is that Mrs. Williams saw him. Now Jane, though a woman of sensibility, has not much imagination, and is not in the slightest degree nervous, neither in dreams or otherwise. She was standing one day, the day before I was taken ill, June 15th, at a window that looked out on the terrace. It was a day she saw as she thought Shelley pass by the window, as he often was then, without a coat or jacket. He passed again. Now as he passed both times the same way.
No, I got it. It's like the cat in the Matrix. It walks past the doorway twice.
Exactly, but this going the same direction.
Just like the cat in the Matrix.
Yes. And as from the side towards which he went each time, there was no way to get back past the window again, except over a wall 20 feet from the ground. She was struck at seeing him pass twice thus, and looked out, and seeing him no more, she cried, "Good God, can Shelley have left from the wall? Where can he be gone?" And then it goes on to just say that later it was confirmed, of course, that he was nowhere near there. He was somewhere else at the time, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so fortunately, we have the example of the cat in the Matrix to make this very clear what she was seeing.
Yeah. So not only did Percy interact with his own doppelganger, so he claims, more than once in his own life, right?
Not in this last story.
No.
This is a new story.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
This story, though, is the story of his friend witnessing what must have been a doppelganger, according to her own conclusions.
Okay.
And as we're going to see again and again, it comes in conjunction with his untimely death. 2 years before Mary Shelley wrote this letter, Percy Shelley's work, Prometheus Unbound, was published in 1820, quoting a passage from Act 1. Ere Babylon was dust, the Magnus Zoroaster, my dead child, met his own image walking in the garden. That apparition, soul of men, he saw. For know there are 2 worlds of life and death. One that which thou beholdest, and the other, is underneath the grave, where do inhabit the shadows of all forms that think and live, till death unite them, and they part no more. You with me? So this is a passage from his work, his
I got
poetry,
that, yeah.
where he is talking about this experience, essentially.
Oh, I understand that this is a passage from his work.
Seeing his doppelganger around the time of the loss of his child, and he kind of, the way he talks about it here is this idea of 2 versions of, he says, right, like, there are 2 worlds of life and death.
Mm-hmm.
One that we behold, and the other is underneath the grave, where the shadows of all forms think and live, till death unite them, and they part no more.
Ah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got the normal world and the shadow realm,
Right.
right?
What's the name of that thing you like? Underworld.
Underworld
like that?
with Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very different.
Okay.
We don't have enough time to go into all the reasons why.
Fair enough.
So, and you just got these 2 halves, or just like 2 sides of a coin, right? And then at the time of death is when I guess the soul is remerged.
Right.
Something
So
like
his
that.
is almost the opposite of like the Ka, but yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, he's entitled to his opinion.
Yeah. He's a poet and he's dead. Let him live, you know?
It's very,
I know.
it's very profound.
Thank you.
I love that.
Another incredibly well-known historical figure, perhaps the most well-known historical figure that we're going to talk about today,
Jesus.
Abraham Lincoln. So no, not Jesus. Yeah, you got me there. Does anyone out there know if Jesus had a doppelganger?
Absolutely.
Did he?
There are so many Jesus lookalikes.
Oh, well,
And people that literally claim to be him. Where do you draw the line?
I draw the line at Jesus.
You want that on a
Jesus
t-shirt?
is off the table. It's too far. Tuesday, November 6th, 1860. The evening of Abraham Lincoln's first election, right? So he just won. Big moment. Super excited. According to his own claims, he's sitting on like a couch in a room, right? And from the couch, he sees...
Just picturing Rod Sterling sitting on a couch in a room. Abraham. Go ahead.
There's a mirror, and he can see like his own reflection, and then he sees a second reflection of himself appear next to him in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to point out that Lincoln was actually very open with his close friends and families. He was a believer in the paranormal. His wife was like a major believer in the paranormal. So that's kind of the background. He's not like a harsh skeptic or anything like that. The double looked pale and sickly. It didn't look just like a mirror image. It looked markedly different. So Lincoln gets up from the couch. He goes to take a closer look, and the double disappears. He sits back down on the couch, looks up again, the double reappears. Lincoln's wife, Mary, interpreted this vision as a sign that Lincoln could be reelected for a second term, but that he wouldn't survive it, given the sickly twinge that we see on the double. Which, of course, she was right.
Is that true? Was he assassinated during his second term?
He was assassinated just a few months into his second term. He was assassinated on April 15th, 1865. And of course, he would have been reelected in November and inaugurated, if that's the right word, in January. I guess when you're serving a second term, you don't go through another inauguration, but
I have no idea.
put into office, yeah.
I mean, yeah, but if you're a doppelganger, you would have to be re-inaugurated.
Those are the rules. So in addition to this doppelganger sighting, leading up to his assassination, Lincoln started to have dreams of his own death. I do want to pause again for a moment because pairing doppelgangers with premonitions kind of calls back to that Finnish and Norse folklore that we talked about at the beginning, right?
Sure.
Quoting from Ward Hill Lamon's book, The Recollections of Abraham Lincoln, quote, I kept on until I arrived at the East Room, which I entered. There I met with a sickening surprise. Before me a catafalque, on which rested a corpse wrapped in funeral vestments. Around it were stained soldiers who were acting as guards, and there was a throng of people gazing mournfully upon the corpse, whose face was covered, others weeping pitifully. Who is dead in the White House? I demanded of one of the soldiers. The president, was his answer. He was killed by an assassin. So that's Lincoln's
That's spooky.
direct, yeah.
Man. Also, so I just Googled this. I was curious what a catafalque was.
Tell us.
It's just a decorated platform that you put a coffin or a casket on when someone very important dies.
Should we get one?
Well, think about like when the Queen passed
Yeah.
and everyone just like walked past
A thing.
a thing.
A podium for a casket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a catafalque.
Cool. I guess he knew he was important.
When did he have this premonition?
It was in the weeks, I believe, leading up to his death.
Okay, so he was already president.
Yeah. This was in his second term. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought this was going to be really interesting. Don't get me wrong, this was very interesting, but I thought it was going to be even more interesting if he had this before he even ran for the presidency.
Oh, yeah. That is morbid for sure.
To just know that you're going to be doomed, but do it anyways, because,
He would, right? He'd be the type.
fate.
Fate.
No fate but what we make.
Do you believe that?
That's Sarah Connor.
Yeah, but do you believe it?
Yes.
Quoting from Wikipedia here, quote, however, Lincoln went on to tell Lamon that in his dreams it was not me, but some other fellow that was killed. It seems that his ghostly assassin had tried his hand on someone else. So I want to just point that out, that it wasn't like Lincoln dreamed of himself. It was, which I might have said earlier, but it was a different face.
In the casket?
Right. On the platform.
On the catafalque.
On the catafalque.
Well, in the casket, which was on the catafalque.
Correct.
That's important. You said ghostly assassin.
Just that's how he describes it.
Was the assassin ever
No, I don't
pictured?
believe so.
I don't know. Just that'd be kind of cool too.
It would be. Paranormal investigator Joe Nickel writes that dreams of assassination would not be unexpected in the first place, considering the Baltimore plot and an additional assassination attempt in which a hole was shot through Lincoln's hat.
What's the Baltimore plot?
All things to look into. For months, Lincoln had looked pale and haggard, but on the morning of the assassination, he told people how happy he was. First Lady Mary Lincoln felt such talk could bring bad luck. Lincoln told his cabinet that he had dreamed of being on a singular and indescribable vessel that was moving with great rapidity towards a dark and indefinite shore, and that he had the same dream before nearly every great and important event of the war, such as Union victories at Antietam, Gettysburg, and Vicksburg.
I mean, that's not really suspicious though.
That's why I'm kind of like wanting to give the context, because I think I sort of brought everybody on this like haunting, emotional, chilling peak when it comes to, whoa, Lincoln had this doppelganger experience, and then he had these dreams of an assassinated president. But like the truth is, like, to your point, of course he did. People were trying to kill him left and right. He was hated by half of the, there's so much going on. He must have been so freaking anxious all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that was very likely to happen and then finally happened.
Right.
And this is something that is honestly very surprising, given just like the political climate of the world, that this isn't something that happens more often.
Totally.
Yeah. But it doesn't, like, I don't know, at least in the US, not since Kennedy. But that just speaks like how many foiled attempts have there been, that we just don't hear about because it'd be bad for morale.
I don't think our country could have any worse morale than it has now. I do wonder what the Baltimore plot, though, is.
So I just Googled The Baltimore plot was an elaborate plan to assassinate Lincoln on his way to inauguration. And the reason why, obviously there was many, plans to assassinate him that never came to fruition. But this one was of note because his chief of security was in on it.
Got it.
So, and he leaked the security plans to the would-be assassins so that they could,
wow,
plan
that's
it.
fucked.
It is fucked.
Your chief of security.
Yeah. So, granted, this is from my 30 seconds of Googling. I'm sure there's more to it than that. But that's why this one stands out as opposed to the many others of guy in crowd pulls gun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the technology now is got to be so much better, I guess, at detecting. I don't know. I mean, maybe not. Who knows?
Yeah. We're just speculating.
Yeah. So a similar story belongs to England and Ireland's Queen Elizabeth I. Elizabeth was the last Tudor to rule and was on the throne from 1558 until her death in 1603. Similar to Lincoln, Elizabeth claimed to have seen herself laying motionless on her bed, looking quite dead. So she kind of comes into her room, sees herself on her own bed, dead, freaks the F out, of course. This ended up being, in some ways, perhaps an omen, because similar to Lincoln, this event predated her death only briefly. So she sees it and then very shortly after dies. Catherine the Great also claimed to have seen her doppelganger. She was a Russian empress ruling between 1762 and 1796.
It's a long reign.
The legend goes that one evening, Catherine was in bed when her servants told her that her doppelganger was sitting on the throne. They were like, "Come quick. You're on the throne."
"'Tis your doppelganger."
That's your Russian accent.
That's my Russian accent.
Catherine arose from bed and followed her servants to the throne room to witness her ghostly doppelganger herself. She, affirmed that that's what was happening. The story then goes that Catherine ordered her servants to shoot at the doppelganger, but there's no clear accounts to verify if the bullets had any effect on this.
This just sounds like a Monty Python skit. But which one do we shoot?
I didn't think about that. According to the accounts, you guessed it, Catherine died very, very shortly after this event. But you're right, maybe from bullet wounds from her security. All of these examples had this foreshadowing element to them, right?
Yeah.
It was this experience of something bizarre right before death or tragedy or right after death or tragedy.
Yes, but I would be far more convinced if it was story of happy guy, no enemies, all is good, crazy premonition of death, all of a sudden dies.
Well, I mean, that's sort of similar to what happened with Percy Shelley. Percy Shelley was not a ruler. He did not have, he was not assassinated. A lot of these queens were not assassinated either.
Did he see his own death? I thought Mary Shelley saw him walk past the window a couple times.
No, he interacted with his own doppelganger, and his friend saw him walk past the window.
Oh,
then that happened kind of leading up to his death.
His friends saw him interacting?
No, but they saw him walk by the window twice.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I don't know. But I mean, those people, you heard his writing. The guy was unhinged.
I mean, I do think it can spark maybe a conversation around trauma or anxiety or stress in some of these cases, right? For sure.
Also, all of these can be explained by illness.
You are such a skeptic, Alan.
So your fever.
I hope
drugs.
that you see your own doppelganger tomorrow. That's what I hope.
You said it yourself. All of these are very similar to out-of-body experiences.
Yeah.
Which can be self-induced. That's just a meditative practice, a hypnosis, if you will. So,
or is it a hypnosis, or is it the experience of triggering a separation of the ka from the physical body?
No, what I'm trying to phrase is that for one that wants to believe, the fabrication would be indistinguishable from the genuine article.
Right. I think that's kind of the point I'm trying to make.
We're both trying to make.
Right. It's your perception, right? Is it
Yes.
this meditative mental journey, or is it a physical separation of the body and the soul?
Right.
And there's no way to really know that.
Think of how, think of all the times people have worked themselves up into a fervor. Think of all of the ultra religious people that claim to see God, right?
Yeah.
That's usually not happening to the guy that is a complete non-believer.
Yeah.
It's, you see what you're looking for.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for part 2 of this episode.
Yeah.
Where can we find that?
You'll find it right here in 2 weeks. There's a few more incidents that I want to highlight here before we say goodbye. Partially because they're really fun.
Okay.
So this one I'm partial to because it feels like a really like glitch in the matrix type account.
Okay.
But from like a really, really long time ago. So Johann Wolfgang von Goethe was...
Great name.
And maybe it's Geoth, but we're going to say Goth, was a German writer and politician. His work was incredibly influential.
And it was incredibly dark and bleak.
He's often credited with shaping modern literature to some extent. I'm going to set the stage a bit before I let Goth tell you his own story in his own words. Because I think it deserves some context, and we've seen, Alan, that you struggle with kind of unpacking these firsthand sources.
Yeah. I need a flow chart.
Goth had been riding like on a horse down a path, having just left a woman named Frederica. Who knows what they were doing, but he just left her and he was riding down this path.
By left her, as in departed
he was no
from
longer
her?
Physically with her. Like he said, bye, see ya. I'm not saying he like broke up with her.
Okay.
I don't even know I don't know if they were friends or whatever.
Just make an inference.
Complicated, yeah.
It's complicated.
When he thought he sees a figure riding towards him. And he says, oh, that's me riding towards myself. Like, that's me. He's dressed entirely differently than he was obviously in that moment. He said that it felt like more of a vision than a physical being. And he shook it out of his mind until 8 years later when he was riding the opposite direction down the same path. And he realized he was wearing the same clothes that he had seen himself wearing that day, and that he had experienced some sort of glitch in time and premonition of this moment.
So he's walking down the street, riding down the street on a horse?
Yeah.
He sees him on a horse going the other way.
Yeah. And then 8 years later,
yeah,
he is riding down that path on the horse on the other way, and he realized that he had a weird premonition of this.
Ah, I see.
So I'm going to quote from his autobiography here, Poetry and Truth.
Poetry, hair swoosh, and truth.
By Goth. Amid all this pressure and confusion, I could not forego seeing Frederica once more. Those were painful days, the memory of which has not remained with me. When I reached her my hand for my horse, the tears stood in her eyes, and I felt very uneasy. I now rode along the footpath towards Drusenheim, and here one of the most singular forebodings took possession of me. I saw, not with the eyes of the body, but with those of the mind, my own figure coming towards me on horseback, and on the same road, attired in a dress which I had never worn. It was a pike gray, with somewhat of gold. As soon as I shook myself out of this dream, the figure had entirely disappeared. It is strange, however, that 8 years afterward, I found myself on the very same road to pay one more visit to Frederica, in the dress of which I had dreamed, in which I wore, not from choice, but by accident. However, it may be with matters of this kind generally, this strange illusion, in some measure, calmed me at the moment of parting. The pain of quitting forever noble Alsace, with all I had gained in it, was softened, and, having at last escaped the excitement of a farewell, I, on a peaceful and quiet journey, pretty well regained my self-possession.
I started to have really strong deja vu, but that's because it's the same story you just told.
Yeah, because I figured we needed to work it out beforehand.
Okay, well, we did, which was great because I really understood the original text because I had context.
We have had deja vu on our episode topic list, I think, since the dawn of this podcast, and we've never...
Why would we? We just covered it.
Yeah, no, not really, but maybe there's not as many horror films about deja vu.
There's not. There's that great movie called Deja Vu, though.
Oh. You cannot research the history of doppelgangers without coming across so many articles about Emily Saget.
Who?
So much of the story that we're about to talk about comes from Robert Dale Owen, a spiritualist who interviewed an eyewitness and published a book in 1860 called Footfalls on the Boundary of Another World. So that's our main source here. In 1845, Emily was a 32-year-old school teacher in Latvia.
I love a good Latvian story.
So Emily was from France and was teaching French at this kind of bougie, uppity private girls' school.
As you do.
And a lot of the articles note that, like, she had a good reputation there, which was kind of hard because the girls could be so mean, the students.
So it's like Latvian mean girls.
Right, like rich Latvian mean girls. The first sign of trouble came when someone would ask, one of the teachers or whatever would ask, "Where's Miss Sage?" And two students would report seeing her in two different locations at the same time. Like one would be like, "Oh, I just saw her in the bathroom." One would be like, "Oh, I just saw her in the, observatory."
The observatory?
I'm just thinking of locations from a Latvian school from the 1850s.
I saw her in the observatory. No, I saw her in the conservatory.
One day, Emily was lecturing at the head of the class, as teachers do, and the girls, the students, saw her double appear. 13 girls saw this. They saw a secondary Mrs. Sage appear. So Emily didn't see anything, did not see this happen, but 13 of the girls did.
I don't know if this was noted in the account, but like she like faded into existence or walked into the room.
Faded, I believe.
Okay, because that's important.
Yeah. So this happened again and again and again.
Otherwise, we find out that wow, she had a sister the whole time.
Yeah. Notably, one time the entire school, which I think was 40-something students, was taking a lesson on sewing while Emily was outside in the garden collecting flowers, and suddenly her doppelganger appeared in front of the class. So she appears in front of the class. Emily's outside. She's not even in the room. And the girls reported that whenever this happened, whenever her double would appear, the original would go kind of pale and sickly. And one brave student even tried to touch the double.
Hell yeah.
And apparently their hand passed through, and it was somewhat tangible. They sort of compared it to cloth.
That is weird.
Yeah. Like it was like there, but not there in the same way a human would be there.
Yeah, like sweeping your hand through a hanging sheet.
Right.
Ooh. It's kind of cool. I like that.
Here, it gets a little bit spookier. This part is what got me. So Emily's double would apparently mimic her movements. And, interesting enough, right? But one time that this happened that makes me really freaked out is there was one claim that Emily was eating dinner with the girls and her double appeared behind her and was mimicking like her eating actions, but had no food in front of her, but was just like standing behind her, like, like as if she was eating dinner. Isn't that just like really bizarre?
Not as bizarre as I was prepared for.
Oh, I'm sorry. I built it up.
I mean, yeah, I got really freaked out by the hanging sheet analogy. Just to have the fact that she can cast mirror images slightly less, I don't know, slightly less.
Yeah, but just the fact that she's like, it's like someone pretending to eat. It's just something like uncanny valley about it, I guess, most literally.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess if like
miming eating behind somebody.
If one is miming and standing,
right,
that's different.
You don't have any food
than like a perfect double of somebody in a different location.
Right. It's just like lingering behind you, doing like copycatting you.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay.
So to kind of answer your question, there was one sighting that came when Sage rose from a chair, but the doppelganger just seemed to linger and remain seated. So that's how it appeared that time. That like Sage just stood up and then the doppelganger was like left in her wake.
So the
real woman stood and the fake was left seated.
Yep.
She was eventually asked to leave the school because the situation was causing so much chaos and was so terrifying to the students and staff. But this wasn't the only time this happened. Emily had an insane number of teaching jobs because this strange occurrence kept happening. According to Dale's book, she had been fired from over 18 jobs before she arrived at the school in Latvia. And that was within 16 years.
That's a lot of jobs.
Yeah. Obviously, Emily's case is a bit of an outlier because she couldn't see herself, right? It wasn't her reacting or interacting with her own doppelganger. Even though the doppelganger was always around her, she could never see it herself. She relied on the reactions and the reports from others to know when it was happening.
That's creepy.
And there's some complexity here because the only report of this occurrence is, again, from Robert Dale Owen's book, which he interviewed an eyewitness to this event.
One of the doppelgangers.
And, I don't know if it was a student, but it was like and it was one person who was there, right? So there's not like he interviewed everybody that was at this school. We're kind of just trusting this one person's account.
Sure.
And the school in Latvia ended up being the last account that we have of Emily Sage. We don't know what happened to her after that. The final thing that I want to talk about occurrence.
New merch.
No, related to doppelgangers, is from the podcast Radio Rental.
Okay.
One of my favorite podcasts of all time.
Okay.
Love it. If you've not listened to it, listen to it. It's Radio Rental is actually hosted by Rainn Wilson, but the essence of it is that there's real people in their own voice telling these very bizarre, scary, terrifying things that have happened to them. And an early episode, and this was kind of the story that hooked me to this podcast.
Okay.
And go listen to it yourself, but I'm going to paraphrase it here. So there's a couple that's living together in an apartment.
Okay.
I think it's in a city. It might be New York, but some kind of major city.
All right. Roughly what year are we talking?
Like, I think 2000s-ish. Like, it was,
Okay.
recent in this guy's adult life.
Sure.
Semi-recent. I'm going to paraphrase it. So, again, go listen to the episode because it will do a better job. But the crux of the story is that this guy in love with his girlfriend, right? She comes home in the middle of the day. They have like a key code to get into their apartment.
Okay.
He's home. She's supposed to be at work. She comes home. She's like wearing clothes from last night or clothes she would not typically wear to work. Like the whole thing is like bizarre to him, but it's his girlfriend, Mm-hmm. She comes in, she enters the key code, she enters the apartment. She starts packing a bag and like throwing shit at him. She causes this whole scene. She's like, fuck you, we're done. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you're the love of my life. We're so happy. Like, what, this is so out of the blue. Like, what's going on? Let's fix this.
Mm-hmm.
She packs a bag, storms out of the apartment and leaves, gets in a cab, and he's on the sidewalk watching her in the cab go away. And he's like devastated, right? This is literally the love of his life. He's devastated. As he's standing there watching her cab pull away, his girlfriend, dressed in very appropriate clothes for work, comes up and hugs him behind. And she's like, oh, what are you doing out here?
Oh.
And the thing about this story that gets me every time is that they and I think maybe her dad's a lawyer or there's something, they get the police involved because they're like, well, then who, this person has the code to our apartment.
Also just packed stole all your stuff.
Right. But has the code to our apartment. He's like, it was you. Like, it would have been like me and you. I know that it's you. You know that it's me. We're very distinct looking.
Surprise.
There's even if I had a twin, you would see I have tattoos. You have your hair. We would know each other.
I have my hair.
Your hair's at a very specific length right now, Anyway, I'm just saying it's like, I think of it like that. You would know your best friend. You would know your sibling. You would know your parent. You would know your partner. It wouldn't be possible, even if it was like a twin, you would know. She comes in, she knows the code. The girlfriend's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, that wasn't me. I was at work. What do you mean? What do you mean? They end up breaking up over it. They can't get past it, which is terrible. But they look at the footage, there's security footage of this person. They have police involved. That's the part that's really interesting to me is there's security footage of this person coming in, punching in the code, entering the apartment. And the girlfriend sees the security footage and she's like, it's not me, but I see, So it's just it's another level because there's proof out there of this. And the police, and it's sad that they broke up over it, but this is the glitch in the Matrix story that I can't get over.
Yeah, there's a lot of loose threads there.
Yeah. So anyway, everyone go listen to Radio Rental. It's season 1. Listen to that story because it gives me chills every time.
Sounds cool.
So there's a few sort of conclusive thoughts I have just to tie us up here. So we don't really know what doppelgangers are, but we do kind of have some understanding, at least from a academic standpoint, around what astral projections are, what out-of-body experiences are. There's some psychologists that claim that certain conditions can cause this sort of phenomenon of seeing your own double. Notably, I think folks suffering from seizure conditions or schizophrenia might be prone to that kind of behavior. It's essentially it's a hallucination, right? That's what this group of psychologists claim that. Sure. And yeah, of course, I believe that people could hallucinate a double of themselves from some, kind of medical condition. Sure. So just putting that out there, right? Just kind of doing our best to provide all the answers and possible theories. But I do think it's interesting, again, with the kind of historical figures we talked about.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, because Abraham Lincoln was famous for not being able to tell a lie.
Right. But I'm saying you could understand from like a stress.
That was George Washington.
No, it's Honest Abe, wasn't it?
Yeah, but George Washington is cherry tree.
Oh, I don't know what that means.
Really? The famous George Washington story where he was like a 10-year-old kid and he chopped down his cherry tree on his like family's property. And his father said like, "Hey, who chopped down this cherry tree?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Father, it was I, for I cannot tell a lie."
He rhymed it like that?
Probably not.
Oh, well, that was nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and make him a politician.
Yeah, also, I'm pretty sure that it got like debunked, but still, that was like a famous story.
Interesting. I never heard it before now.
Well, there it is.
But what I was going to say is like, I understand maybe from some of these like really, prominent leaders, rulers who have stress and anxiety of assassination or whatever. I just think it's interesting the kind of correlations between them, whether it's paranormal or something else, that they kind of happen around or before death, after death. But I'm intrigued by these modern accounts of Glitch in the Matrix. And if you go, my favorite subreddit, Glitch in the Matrix, and you like sort on the top posts of all time, it's like a lot of people encountering themselves in the woods, a lot of things like that, people seeing themselves at different ages. I was actually just listening to a podcast, Radio Rental again, recently, where somebody kind of writes in the mirror, like a time travel thing, like leaves a message for themselves, like, so it's stuff like that where it's intriguing. It's an intriguing kind of ethereal theme.
It is intriguing.
Yeah, we agree. So I don't know, I guess, what do you think? You don't believe that there's any sort of paranormal doppelganger type thing that could exist? Do you think that it's all mental?
Of the accounts listed, I mean the one from Radio Rental was a little suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just too many avenues that have yet to be explored to be like, yep, this is supernatural. And all of the historical figures, again, if you can easily just freak yourself out with stress. Just imagine like knowing, not speculating, but knowing that there are thousands of people that are not just wanting you dead, but actively planning your murder. Just like think of the stress that must weigh on somebody.
Yeah.
To just be like not necessarily. Yeah, I was gonna say like just to be like a despised ruler or politician.
Not to mention like living through and leading the like deadliest war, one of the most deadly wars of all time at the same time that's happening. Absolutely.
Because like, yeah, so Abraham Lincoln, a great guy, right? But there was a whole half the country that wanted him dead, But
also like so many people on both sides were dying. It's like there's so much death going around at that time. Like it was just so morbid and dark.
And being a ruler. Was she an empress, Catherine the Great?
Empress.
Or just to be an empress, like the pressure that must weigh on a single human, right? So, yeah, I'm not swayed. It's very interesting. It's very intriguing. And I love the stories, but I don't necessarily want to do the stamp of, paranormal.
Well, if anyone out there has any Glitch in the Matrix or doppelganger type personal experiences, it would be really cool to get some of those in so we could help convince Alan. So you can always submit your personal paranormal experiences around any topic to us if you email filmsaboutLunatics@gmail.com or DM us anywhere on social media. But specifically, if you have doppelganger, deja vu type things like this, that would be really cool to hear. And of course, next episode, again, we're going to be back with part 2. We're going to talk about how all of this connects to pop culture, specifically in horror. And we're going to explore some of my favorite films of all time by my favorite filmmakers of all time. So I'm excited.
Interesting.
Intriguing. As always, thank you all so much for being here. We will be back very soon. Stay spooky and stay safe.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening. If you'd like some bonus content, consider supporting us on Patreon to access our patron-exclusive podcast, Horror Movie Club.
Also, head to lunaticsproject.com to check out our spooky merch and apparel.
You can find us at Lunatics Project on Twitter and TikTok, and The Lunatics Project on Instagram and YouTube, where you'll find our short horror films, cemetery tours, and so much more.
And please rate and review. A little feedback goes a long way to help us grow and get more content out there.
Our cover art is by Pilar Kep, and musical bumpers are by Michaela Papa and Jordan Moser.